For more on the latest, let's go to the border in Del Rio. The National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd joins me where the governors of Florida and Texas will be there. But Brandon, first, thanks for taking time for joining us. Let me build upon Jonathan Seri's last part of his report. They're talking about the possible lifting of Title 42. When I looked at these numbers, I looked in the RGV sector, particularly the hardest hit area, at the other than Mexican non-unaccompanied children. Now, that's a little technical there, but that's basically single adults that aren't from Mexico. Those from the Northern Triangle, up more than 756%. Does that trend worry you when you look at the possibility of lifting Title 42?
It's one of the biggest worries that we have right now. When you talk about getting rid of Title 42 and you're talking about an unprecedented crisis that we've never seen before, and when we're dealing with so many people from around the world, not just Mexico, not just the Northern Triangle, but from around the world, and when you talk about getting rid of Title 42, all you're doing is inviting more and more people to come in. The numbers continue to go up month after month, which clearly shows that the Biden administration does not care about border security, and therefore he does not care about the safety and security of the American public.
So when we talk about why people cross our border illegally, we look at the push factors, the poverty, the security situation, gangs, violence in their home countries, and the pull factors, which is incentives like the likelihood that an administration could be friendly to them. When you say the administration doesn't care, are you specifically pointing to the fact that they are not addressing that pull factor of the fact that so many are coming?
The push factors have always existed in these countries. The pull factor is what has been missing, and that's what this administration has done. They've brought back catch and release. That is the magnet that is drawing so many people to come here illegally. When we're releasing as many people as what we've done in the past, of course, it's incentivizing illegal immigration. And when you reward people for violating the law, you can expect more people to do exactly that.
When you look at the June numbers, 188,829. In May, 180,000 plus. You are seeing numbers that we have not seen in more than 20 years. Walk it out for me, Brandon. What happens if this doesn't get under control?
In reality, we've never seen these numbers before. When we talk about fiscal year, you've got to remember that 3 of those months were under President Trump, and those months were low months. But when you look at a calendar year, we are on pace to set record numbers for a calendar year. We've never seen month over month over month rises like what we're seeing today. So this is the biggest crisis that we've ever faced. We've never faced the number of people from other countries that we're seeing right now. So this clearly is an administration-driven issue, and the administration just isn't doing anything to fix it, and we can expect it to get worse.
When I was there where you are in Del Rio a month ago, in a week of span time, there was apprehensions of more than 35 countries. For the month, it was more than 70. You have Governor DeSantis coming from Florida. You will be at the meeting with Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis. What do you know about the trip, and what will the governor see, DeSantis that is, that's so important?
Well, this just shows you how bad this problem is. The number of drugs that are entering our country, killing our children. The CDC just came out and said that we've never had more drug overdose deaths than what we're seeing right now. Governor DeSantis is worried about his state. He's worried about the problems that cross our border illegally and go into his state. And there's several other governors across the country because they know it's not just affecting Texas, Arizona, California, New Mexico. It's affecting every state in this country. And if we don't get this under control, it's going to continue to get worse. And the problem is this is an easy solution. This isn't something that takes a lot of work to get under control. This administration just doesn't have the political will to do it.
Brandon, Florida is one of a handful of states and governors who have pledged support, resources, National Guard troops to Governor Abbott in Texas. Do you believe, as someone who is on the operational side of this, will that help? What can it do to help try and perhaps get things under control?
It will help us as far as the number of gotaways. So not only are we arresting more people than we've ever seen before, but we're having more people get away than we've ever seen before as well. And that's what's going to help. But the problem is they can't do anything about the catch and release. That has to be an administration-solved issue. We can put as many people on the border as we want, and we're going to arrest a record number of people, But if they continue to let them go, people are going to continue to come. And that is the #1 problem.
Have you been invited to the White House? Have you met with either Vice President Harris or President Biden about this crisis?
I have not. And that's what's so disappointing about this. They only care about their base. They're only listening to their base. They're not going to listen to people that are going to give them actual advice. Somebody that has endorsed Democrats and Republicans alike, that's myself. You know, you would think that they would want that perspective. They would want a perspective from the ground, from boots on the ground, what's actually going on, what needs to be done. But because they do not have the will to solve this problem, they're not going to invite people like myself to give them the advice that they need in order to get this under control.
And lastly, just about 30 seconds there, Brandon, but I want to talk about the increasing number of criminal migrants that are being apprehended. We see on Twitter the sector chiefs putting it out. How big of a problem is that?
That's another thing that we've never seen before. This is, again, we're breaking records in every single category. We're seeing more sex crime people that have been arrested for sex crimes. We're seeing more people that have been wanted for murder. We're seeing more people that have committed violent crimes in this country that are crossing the border illegally. Again, this is a problem that can be solved. This administration just doesn't have the will. And Griff, if you don't mind, I would like to wish a very happy birthday to somebody very special in my life, my mother. She supports border security 100%. I appreciate you allowing me to do that.
Happy birthday, Mama Judd. Thank you for raising a son that dedicated himself to service. I know it's overwhelming for the agents there because everyone I talk to is overwhelmed in this situation. Brandon Judd in Del Rio, thank you for taking time.
Thank you, Griff.